This is one of my favorite Echeveria hybrids. Modern hybrids can be a bit of a hit and miss as many are bred for looks rather than hardiness. And as a consequence, a lot of them are a right pain in the backside to grow. But not exotic. From my experience, this magnificent succulent is both hardy and stunning. Succulents used to create exotic were Echeveria Topsy Turvy and Echeveria laui. I have to say I'm a bit surprised at how easy exotic is to grow, as laui in my opinion certainly is not. Although Echeveria can be a bit challenging, I would recommend this one to beginners. Exotic is a medium-sized Echeveria and single rosettes can grow to approximately 15 to 20 centimeters. The size will very much depend on the growing conditions and root space. It will eventually form a small clump that can measure over 20 centimeters. The offsets can, however, be a bit slow to appear and can take a couple of years. Height-wise, exotic reaches about 10 centimeters and grows low to the ground. The leaves are a perfect mixture of Topsy Turvy and laui. They rise slightly in the middle into an upside-down V shape. And just like laui, they are rounded and chunky. Another laui trait that Exotica has inherited is the thick layer of farina. Farina is like a sunscreen for succulents and protects the plant from sunburn. The color is mostly silvery blue, though it can change throughout the seasons. During winter or when the plant is stressed, a bit of purple pink can come through. This succulent will grow best outdoors in a bright sunny spot. It does tolerate outdoor shade and filtered light, but is likely to be less colorful. It can grow leggy and stretched as a result. Fungal diseases are also more likely to attack when succulents, especially Echeveria, are grown in shaded spots that are often more humid. Although exotic is not that susceptible to fungal disease, it is best to not tempt it. Personally, I would not recommend growing it indoors, as it's very likely it will not survive unless you have a big sunny window, a sunroom or plant growing lights. It should, however, tolerate overwintering and short stays indoors as long as it's kept in a super bright spot. It can be grown in pots outdoors as well as frost-free gardens. If grown in pots, repotting every year or so will ensure offsets and a happy plant. It does tolerate being root bound, but there may not be as many offsets and some of the bottom leaves are likely to die off. If you only get light frosts and no snow during winter, you can grow this succulent in the garden. Because it grows low to the ground, the best position in the garden would be around the edges where it cannot get overgrown by other plants. Bigger, more vigorous neighbors can easily smother it or cast a shadow that will cause leggy growth. When growing in the ground, you can help it establish by mixing any type of potting mix with the garden soil. The roots tend to be quite thin and can find it difficult to break through hard garden soil. By cultivating and mixing in a bit of potting mix, you'll add nutrients and improve the soil structure. When growing succulents in the garden, it's best to choose a slope, raised beds or a spot where water doesn't pool after the rain. In pots, exotic will thrive on good quality succulent potting mix. Succulent potting mix will have the right pH and nutrients tailored to succulent plants. As we discussed earlier, when growing in the garden, it's best to cultivate the soil by mixing in a bit of potting mix. Our nursery exotic live outdoors all year round, even when it rains a lot. But for them to survive the rain, they need to be planted in wall-draining potting mix and be in a sunny spot. If your climate is quite wet and humid, it may be best to bring it under cover when it rains heavily or keep it in a ventilated greenhouse. If you're ever worried, it's always best to err on the side of caution and bring succulents, especially Echeveria, under cover during rainy periods. During dry weather or when growing under cover, allow the potting mix to dry out between waterings. In summer, this could mean watering a few times per week and almost not at all during the cold months. Exotic is very drought tolerant and can survive without water for months. But in my opinion, it should not be left too dry for too long, as it may start losing leaves. Temperature-wise, exotic will tolerate heat well over 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit, though it should be moved out of the sun once it gets this hot. If exposed to direct sun during extreme heat waves, the leaves can suffer sunburn and the plant could die, especially when planted in dark colored pots. Exotic is not very frost hardy. It can get frostburn and even die when temperatures drop below the freezing point for too long. If you only get the occasional frost, use a frost cloth to protect your succulents. During deeper frosts or snow, bring this plant indoors for the duration. Exotic can be a bit difficult to propagate due to scarce offsets and chunky leaves. It's also possible to propagate from seed, but in my opinion this is not a great alternative as seeds often fail, they are very slow and finding a good seed seller is difficult. If your exotic is growing offsets, cutting them off is the best and fastest propagation method. Offsets need to be big enough to separate and have a stalk to cut through. If they are too small, they can fail. You can either cut or pull off where the cuttings are big but the stalk is not developed well enough. Cuttings should be left to dry for about 24 hours before planting. This will give the wound a chance to heal and prevent harmful organisms from getting in. Once the wound is dry, they can then be planted into pots filled with succulent potting mix and transplanted into the garden or a bigger pot once enough roots develop. First roots should start growing in 2 to 4 weeks and the plant will be ready to transplant in approximately 2 to 3 months. If you want to grow loads, leaves can be propagated and have a good success rate if you manage to separate them without breaking. Because the leaves are so chunky, they can easily break in the wrong place, which will significantly increase the chance of them failing. Start at the bottom. If you're finding it hard to access the leaves, pull the plant out of its pot. After separating a few, leave the leaves in a tray in a dry, sheltered but bright spot. Once you get new growth, plant the leaves in trays or pots filled with succulent potting mix and wait a few months until the roots have grown well into the pot. If you'd like a more detailed how-to on propagating Echeveria leaves, I have a video dedicated to just that, which I'll link in the description and at the end of this video. In my experience, propagating is best done in spring. Summer is usually also good, but do be careful to protect your cuttings and leaves from strong sun as they burn easily. In climates where autumn and winter are mild, you can also propagate cuttings at the beginning of autumn. Personally, I stop propagating leaves by early to mid-summer so the plant has a chance to develop before winter. Leaves that are not yet developed are also more prone to dying if exposed to direct hot summer sun. So there's good and bad news when it comes to pests and exotic. The good news is that aphids and mealybugs tend not to bother this succulent too much. Aphids do attack the flowers but usually don't spread to the rosette below. Mealybugs also tend to leave exotic alone, though I'd still recommend to be vigilant with this pest. Watch out for any white streaks, cottony sacs or malformed growth. Root mealybugs are quite common though and spread easily as they hide in the soil. They particularly like root-bound plants, so do check on those roots every year or so if you're not reporting regularly. And now for the bad news. Exotic is very attractive to bigger pests such as snails, slugs, caterpillars and grasshoppers. They can do a lot of damage in one sitting and completely ruin a plant. The inflorescence on this plant is amazing. Flowers grow on tall stems above the foliage. The stem also grows the powdery leaves. The light pink and orange flowers look so beautiful against the powdery stalk and leaves. Here in Australia, exotic flowers throughout the summer months, but this can be different in other parts of the world. All Echeveria are said to be non-toxic and safe for humans, dogs, cats and other pets and livestock. Although exotic may look like it's coated in icing sugar, I would not recommend eating this plant. And that is that for today. I hope this video was useful, and if you'd like to add anything or would like to ask a question, you can do so in the comments below. To learn more about succulents, hit that subscribe button or go to our website succulentgrowingtips.com. Thank you so very much for watching.